I was so thrilled to connect with Dan Gingiss, who is all about customer experience, and to have him on the podcast. He has just updated his book, Becoming the Experience Maker. Well worth reading. It is a great read because it's easy to follow, practical, great examples in there, something that you'll find really useful that you can start to inspire thoughts of how you can use customer experience in your business. His examples cover both big and small business in the book, as well as what we talk about today. Dan talks about 3 characteristics companies should strive for in creating customer experience. They are simple, practical, and inexpensive. And I think we all can agree that they are a great starting point. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Dan Gingiss. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on the Retail Success Series. I'm so thrilled that you're with me, and I'm also thrilled to have my guest with me today, Dan Gingiss. Dan is the experience maker. Dan is an international keynote speaker who believes that a remarkable customer experience is the best marketing strategy, and I totally agree with him. He's the author of a fabulous book, Becoming the Experience Maker. I read the original edition of this book earlier in the year and have enjoyed both it and the updates with new examples, new experiences to share in the book, as well as some additional chapters that we'll talk about in our conversation. I know we're not here to talk about this, but I love a couple of fun facts about Dan. So Dan sung the national anthem at 3 Major League Baseball stadiums. He delivered pizza to Michael Jordan, and he owns 6 vintage pinball machines, which actually has given me a great idea of how to use my daughter who's moved out her bedroom that's now free. At the end, if I have a moment, I'm going to ask him about one of these fun facts. So welcome, Dan. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining me today. I'm really excited. I loved your book. It really did give me a lot of inspiration, lots of great examples in there. And I love a book with examples because I truly think that's how we learn from inspiration that we get from others. So as I say, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Excellent. All right. Well, can you start by telling us a bit about your customer experience journey?
Sure. So I spent 20 years in the corporate space, mostly in marketing. I ran marketing teams for almost every channel you can imagine, starting back in the day in direct mail and then getting into social media and email and all the digital channels. Eventually, I was recruited into a customer experience role. And to be honest, I didn't really know what customer experience was at the time. This was, 2012 maybe. And so I learned on the job, and I quickly realized that this was absolute gold, that this was far more effective than traditional marketing campaigns, and that when we could get our own customers talking about us and telling other people about us, word of mouth marketing is the holy grail. And so I sort of put 2 and 2 together and realized that the way that you get to word of mouth marketing is through customer experience. That was the real inspiration. I had a few other jobs after that where I kind of put that into effect in real companies, and then decided to go off on my own in 2019 and share this with as many people as I could.
Great timing, 2019.
It was, yeah, yeah. I have to say, being a speaker in 2020 was not a great career choice, but it was okay. We all adapted just like everyone else did and learned to do things virtually. And it wasn't as bad of a year as it certainly could have been. And now, luckily, it's in the rearview mirror.
Excellent, excellent. As I mentioned, there's so much gold in this book, but I love that you talk about 3 characteristics that companies really should strive for when creating customer experience: simple, practical, inexpensive. Can you tell us why these are so important?
Yeah, so this comes from my time working at companies of all sizes. And I realized that, the bigger that you get, the more complex your business gets and the more siloed your team gets and all of these things. And even small companies can fall victim to this. And so, in order to get things done, you just have to be able to be flexible and to move quickly. And so, simple, practical, and inexpensive are my 3 pieces that allow you to do that. Because when it's simple, First of all, simplicity is a core facet of customer experience because our customers want things to be simple. So we have to design them in a simple way. Practical means that it's attainable, that you don't have to have a year-long technology project to make it happen, or you don't have to invest tons of resources, separate a team from their day jobs for a month to get this thing done. And then inexpensive is exactly what it sounds like, is that most of the examples in my book do not require much, if any, money. If you're thinking that the only way that you can improve customer experience is to invest lots of money, you're sort of missing the point. Customer experience is the sum of all the interactions that a customer has with you. The best way to improve is just to start digging on those interactions. And if you think about how many times and ways and places that you interact with a single brand, it's a lot, and we can't fix them all at once, but we can start somewhere, and we can start crossing things off the list. And what you find is that the little things add up to big things.
Absolutely. And when we talk about silos and particularly bigger companies, I think that's where the opportunities lie for small businesses because, they don't have those silos. They don't have that big corporate structure that holds them back. And I really think that that gives competitive advantage to all of the small independent retailers out there to be able to be agile enough to make the changes that customers need.
It should be a competitive advantage. It doesn't necessarily mean that they leverage it, right? And I'll tell you, the other thing about small businesses is that it's the same story as really any size business. One of the things that I like to say on stage when I'm doing keynote speeches is that competing on price is a losing game. It's a race to the bottom. We don't want to do that in any industry, any size business. Competing on product or service is also really tough because, let's face it, most businesses are becoming commoditized. So you might sell products that absolutely no one else sells, but chances are someone down the street sells something substantially similar to what you're selling. And that is especially true in service businesses. And so if we can't compete on price and we can't compete on product or service, the only thing left to compete on is experience. The good news is any business can compete on experience, and it's the hardest thing to copy because it is delivered mostly by your employees, and you are the only people that have your employees. So almost by definition, the experience you provide to your customers should be unique and therefore can be something that stands out in the marketplace.
Absolutely. I personally have a bit of a pet peeve that I don't love seeing businesses without telephone numbers as an example on websites. I don't know what your thought is on that, but to me that's such a simple make it available. Most people don't choose to use it anymore, but let them choose if they want to call you.
Yeah, I think communication channels and payment methods are the two places where I would say you want to offer as many as possible. I don't ever want to stand in the way of you calling me or paying me, right? So
Absolutely.
if you want to pay me in Australian dollars, even though I'm in the US, I will figure out how to convert it because it's okay with me, right? I even joke on my invoices that if you want to pay me in a bag of nickels, all I ask is that exact change required, right? However you want to do it is fine. I don't want to stand in your way. And I think with communication channels, it is about meeting the customer where they are, not making them come to you. And so if there are certain generations that only want to call, there are certain generations that will never call and that will only want to communicate with you on a social channel or using chat. We have to be available in both of them.
So agree with you. Thinking about small business in particular, interested to know how you can get businesses to prioritize customer experience and put the time into both the budget, and which we say doesn't have to be big by any stretch, talking about the fact that most of this can be done free or at low cost, and the resources and time, I guess, is the resource that's probably tightest for a lot of small business owners. How do we get their buy-in?
So for me, and this is true in my small business as well. I mean, I basically run a one-man show. I have some virtual assistants that help me out, but I'm a pretty small business as well. And if you ask me, what's the best way for you to book speeches? The answer is somebody in my audience sees me speak and wants to hire me. Okay, that's word of mouth. It's exactly the same thing as a retailer might experience. And so what I would ask that retailer is if you could make it so that every person that shops with you tells two other people about you, what would that do to your business? And the answer is going to be it's going to help you grow really fast. it is not going to cost you a lot, and in fact can save you money because you don't have to spend as much money on sales and marketing. If our customers are our best salespeople and marketers, then we don't have to spend as much time or money on that, and we're able to grow in a faster, more sustainable way. So far, I haven't found a business yet that has said, no, thank you, I don't want more referrals, right? Wherever we work, whatever we do, it is helpful when other people talk about us and bring new business to us. And so if you're not willing to spend time on making that happen, then you're just spending time on something else that is a longer path to profitability.
Absolutely. So agree with you. When you think about businesses then trying to get the buy-in of their staff, is it about the owners walking the walk? What do you think are the main things that need to be considered, and how do they sell that message to their team to get that buy-in as well? Because obviously they're the front face and it's crucial they get
Yeah.
it right.
To me, there's two steps. There is inspiration and empowerment. I usually play on the side of inspiration in the sense of what I do is go into companies and I'll talk to an entire employee base and get everybody excited about customer experience, because I'm a believer that no matter what your title is, no matter what your job description is, customer experience is part of your job. You could be in the finance department in the back office having never spoken to a customer before. And I guarantee you, I can point out places of your job that have a direct impact in terms of the customer experience. And if you're not thinking that way, then you're making decisions that are bad for customers. And if they're bad for customers, they're bad for your business. So the first thing is to inspire people and to get them excited about this being part of their job and the opportunity that is included in that. But then you have to have the empowerment part. And this is really where management comes in, because empowering employees means essentially telling them, you're never going to get in trouble as long as you do right by the customer. We might tell you afterwards that we would have liked you to do it a different way, or next time we'd like you to spend less money or whatever. But no one's going to get mad at you if your heart's in the right place. And the idea was, I was trying to make it right for the customer. And so we have to have our employees feel that empowerment. Otherwise, they're going to be afraid to do it. And we see this as consumers all the time. When we call a call center and what we get is, well, I can't do that for you. So I either have to call my boss, or you have to talk to a different department, or this rule is preventing me from doing this, or this is our policy. It's all of these things that are making it so that they can't do right by the customer. If we get rid of all of that and we basically tell our agents or whoever our frontline people are, go ahead and just make it right for the customer. Just make the customer happy. We can solve the rest of it later. And one of the things that is involved in solving it later is that usually when a customer is unhappy, it is because something inherent in your experience has broken. And if it has broken for them, it has probably broken for more customers as well. And so it's very important, once we're done making sure the customer is happy, that we take a step back and we say, what caused them to be unhappy? And can we fix the underlying problem? And I did this when I was at a credit card company in the US called Discover all the time. We would find these opportunities. And one of the things we had figured out was that for every person that called us with a problem, on average, there were 100 customers that had the same problem that didn't call. Now, those are the ones we need to be worried about, right? Because those are the ones that are silently angry at us. And those are the ones that, as soon as another credit card company offers them a great promotion, they're going to leave. And so think of this from a retailer perspective as well, right? If you have a customer that's unhappy with you, but they're not even telling you they're unhappy, then you don't know, so you can't fix it. And worse is, as soon as they get an opportunity to shop somewhere else, they're going to be gone. We have to be able to take that step back and say, all right, Susie was complaining about XYZ. We've solved it for Susie, but let's make sure there's no more Susies out there. And let's make sure this doesn't happen again, because the next person may not even tell us. They may just leave.
Absolutely right. I happened to get your newsletter this morning about empathy and customer experience. And I love that you use the example of Zappos in there, having everyone in the team go onto the floor, basically answering calls and so forth. And I
Yep.
think that's a great example in relation to this of doing it right. Just tell us while we're on that, how do people sign up for that newsletter, Dan? Because I think I did it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so you're talking about my LinkedIn newsletter. I actually have two. I have an email newsletter and a LinkedIn newsletter. So on LinkedIn, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and the newsletter should be available for you to subscribe to. And then if you are interested in the email newsletter, which is different content, just go to cxnewsletter.com, and that will forward you to my site for on a sign up. The LinkedIn one comes out every week, and the email one comes out every other week.
I love it. I'm going to sign up to the second one, but it was really great article, by the way. So, yeah, well worth
Yeah.
everyone signing up for that as well.
And
Just on
just
the
a
side.
fun story for you, just as a little offshoot. So my first job out of college was at I'd say a medium-sized business that sold high-end collectibles. So things like plates, dolls, figurines, like things that you put on your mantle. And they made all of us work the phones in customer service around the holidays because instead of hiring additional people, they would bring pretty much everyone in the company took turns going to do this. And I always thought this was fun because, there's nothing quite like hearing the actual voice of your customer and hearing the emotion behind or the frustration, whatever it is. Well, one of the first calls that I took, as it turns out, this lady wanted to order one of my products because I was a product manager. And it just so happened of the hundreds of products she was calling and she wanted one of mine. And so I had this nice conversation with her and we were chatting and, she bought the product. Everything was great. So I hang up the phone and I get this tap on my shoulder. And it's the person in charge of the call center. And she says, Dan, we try to keep our calls to, I think it was under 5 minutes. And I said, oh, really? Well, how long was I talking with her? And she says, 19 minutes. I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't even close, was I? But I just was having fun, right? And I was just talking, and she didn't seem to mind, right? She was enjoying the conversation as well. And so that was just an early example for me of sort of that conflict between, you want to do right by the customer, and we don't need 19-minute phone calls all that often.
Clearly, you were meant to
But
be
you
in
made
customer experience.
Yeah, yeah, even early on. You made me think of that because, of course, Zappos is known for this. You can look it up. There's this one call that they had that was like 30 hours long or something like that, where they would not hang up until the person got their problem solved. Unbelievable customer service.
Wow. Okay. I know that even some of the bigger companies here do have their teams go out on the floor, but I think, it's so important that everyone knows what's going on at their coal face so that they can fix it, whether it's a
Yeah.
small or a big business. Even I know with my small business, I was away from the floor a lot. I was doing the marketing. So I needed to be there too to know, to understand what customers were liking and not liking about the process.
Yeah, and if you don't have a call center, because maybe you're not that big, I still advise that you become a customer of your own company. And so that means not just saying that you are standing in your customer's shoes, but actually turning around and being on the other side of the counter and being a customer. One of the examples I like to give here that was, I think it was in the book, is I did some work in the dental industry. And one of the things that I noticed when I went into a lot of different dental offices is that most dentists put their private office in the back of the building and there's a separate entrance. And the reason that they do this is because if their first appointment is at 9 a.m. and they're, stumbling in at 8:59 or something, they don't want to walk through the waiting room, right? And have everybody see that they're walking in, a minute or two late. Okay, that makes sense. But the problem is if you're a dentist and you never walk in the front door, then you're never going to see that there are fingerprints on the door. And you're never going to see that the magazine rack hasn't been updated since COVID. And you're never going to see that we don't have enough pens in the pen holder or we don't have enough coffee in the coffee pot or whatever it is that can affect the experience. If you never actually view your own waiting room from a patient's perspective, you're never going to know. This is true in retail as well, right? We've got to walk into our own store in the front door as if we are a customer. If we own a restaurant, we need to sit down and eat the food, not as an employee, but as a customer. We need to, order from the menu and pay like a customer would pay so that we go through every single step to see what it's like. And this is where you'll go to pay and you'll be like, why does this credit card machine not work? And then your server will be like, oh, well, it hasn't worked for weeks. well, why didn't you tell me? Right. But you won't ever figure this stuff out unless you are out there doing it. And so, highly encourage that. It's not just about the call center, it really is all facets. Last piece on this, if you have a website or you have a mobile app, you should go use it as a customer. Go sign up. Go forget your password because nobody yet has made a good forgotten password experience. Go do all of the things where you literally try to break it because your customers, that's going to happen to them. And so as you go through, you can then visualize and say, man, I'm not excited about this part of the experience. You can pretty much assume your customers aren't either. And that's a great way to find opportunities.
That's it's so true. I have a little program, digital audit, where I go through other people's websites, and I know it's the same for me. You get that website done, you go, oh, thank God it's done. I don't have to think about it again. But then you add and you tweak and you break things, and you don't even realize. And the links that aren't missing, and all these basic things that are very easy to fix. But it's just that we don't want to look at it again. So taking that moment to look at it fresh-eyed and have it as part of your day's chores, I think is really important. So, great idea. I want to get into the nitty gritty of your philosophy in the book. You talk about there's two types of customer experience. There's that kind of housekeeping, but then there's remarkable experiences. And that's what we're really going to be talking about, those experiences that are literally worth a remark. And you have a great system or acronym for these remarkable experiences that you call WISE. Can you tell us about WISE and what each of those letters stand for?
Of course. So I call it WISE because I want people to become wise to the power of customer experience. And once you are, you never go back. WISE, as you mentioned, is an acronym. It stands for Witty, Immersive, Shareable, and Extraordinary. And very quickly, Witty is not about being funny, but it is about having fun. And it's about showing the humanity behind your brand and allowing your employees to be their human selves. And if one of them's a little bit, goofy, then let them be goofy. And if another one's a little more serious, then let them be serious. But it's about also finding opportunities in every communication channel just to have fun. And so I have fun with my contracts, my legal contracts, because why not? Legal contracts are usually boring. Why not have fun with it? I have fun with my invoices. I have fun with the privacy policy on my website. Like anytime you're communicating with people, you can have fun. It's just that most of the time we don't. And so that's Witty. Immersive is about creating experiences that people really feel in their bones, because this is how you create memories. And when people have good memories, they tell other people about them. And so usually in order to create an immersive experience, we either appeal to one of the five senses or we appeal to somebody's emotions. And if you can do both, even better. And if you think about some of your best childhood memories, chances are you can tell me either an emotion that you were feeling, or there's going to be some descriptive piece you're going to tell me that has to do with taste or sound or hearing or smelling or seeing. And so we can be strategic about creating immersive experiences. We also can be strategic about creating shareable experiences. So sharing is the ultimate goal in the sense that that's what word of mouth is. But people don't share just anything, and they don't share because we tell them to share. So a lot of companies, the way they think that they can become shareable is they just say, well, follow us on Instagram and don't forget to tag us and use our hashtag and blah, 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 blah. The reality is that people don't need or want those instructions anymore. What I tell people is think about the last time that you reached into your pocket or your purse and you pulled out your phone and you took a picture or a video spontaneously. What was happening? Why did you do that? Nobody told you to do it. You just did it. You just knew it was time to do that, right? And so we can do this strategically. We can figure out in our business what moment do we want people to pull out their phone? Like if you could design the Instagram post about your business, what would it look like? Now, if you can't answer that question, you're not going to be shareable, right? So you have to be able to say, I want them to photograph this moment with me because this is the most memorable moment. And then you design that moment so that they pull out their phone and they take a picture of it. Lots of fun examples of being shareable. But again, it requires strategic focus. And then extraordinary, if I had to pick a favorite, I think maybe extraordinary would be it, because extraordinary just means a little better than ordinary. And what I have seen in all my research is consumers only share two kinds of experiences. They share really, really great ones and really, really terrible ones. The problem is most experiences that we have are somewhere in the middle of that. They're ordinary, they're boring, they're average. The millennials call it meh. My teenagers call it mid. Every generation has a different word, but it all means the same thing, which is not worthy of talking about. This is really about finding the spots in your customer journey that are ordinary. And there are ordinary spots in everybody's customer journey, and figuring out how to just up level them a little bit. Because even that little up level is going to make you stand out from where you were and also make you stand out from the competition. Because the good news is your competition's ordinary as well. And so if you can be extraordinary, you will stand out. Doesn't have to be costly, doesn't have to require lots of resources. Some of my favorite examples in the book on extraordinary are completely free. It's just about thinking differently about how you present the experience. Super quick example on this one because we're on it. I went to a Japanese restaurant and I ordered sake. And normally when you order sake, you get these like little white porcelain cups that they are served in. And they're fine, but everybody uses those. So at this particular restaurant, the server came out with an entire tray full of like 15 different sake cups of different designs and shapes and sizes, and asked me to select which one I wanted. Just that little extra thing, what made it so much more memorable, right? Because first of all, I got to be involved in the process. I got to help define my own sake drinking experience, which of course makes it not only extraordinary, but of course I took a picture of the tray full of cups, right? And I posted about it on social media and I asked people to guess which one I picked and which one they would have picked and whatever. And it becomes a little bit of a game. But this is how we get people talking. And this didn't cost them any more money. It wasn't more operationally complex. It didn't require technology. It just was being a little bit different, but that's what stands out.
You also have an example, I think it was your son's birthday, just a sparkler and the addition of that little sparkler with the happy birthday message, and suddenly it becomes something you want to share, which I think again, it's always the simple answer is always the best answer. I'm totally with you.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between a sparkler and a candle is that a sparkler is better. That's the difference, right? I mean, a sparkler is not more expensive. A sparkler
Yep.
doesn't require more operational complexity. A sparkler does not require more technology. It's just better than a candle. And so, folks that are not in the restaurant business use it as a metaphor. Think
Mm,
about in your business where you have a metaphorical candle, which is something that you do for your customers that's nice, but you've been doing it forever and it's getting a little stale. Or maybe your competitors do it too, and that's how you learned it, which means it's not at all differentiating. And you just try to figure out how to convert the candle to the sparkler. And you've gone from ordinary to extraordinary.
totally agree. You've also upped the book. So, from the original version to now becoming the experience maker, we've got a new letter that we're looking at. We're now wiser rather than just wise. The R. Tell us about what is going on with R and what we need to be thinking about in that area.
Sure. Well, once you become wise to the power of customer experience, I then want you to become wiser than your competitors. And when you implement wise, what you're going to see is that more people are going to talk about you. And the R is about being responsive. So we need to be part of those conversations when our customers are talking about us. And that may be in lots of different channels. I would say historically, we might think of it in the social media channel of, hey, somebody tweets about us or posts on Facebook about us, and we want to respond. And yes, we absolutely want to do that. But it's also about being responsive, as we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, to whatever channel your customers want to talk to you in or to give you feedback in. That could be in chat, that could be an email, that could be on the phone. There's all sorts of ways. In fact, you can also be responsive to a customer who is physically standing in front of you, treating them like a human being and, observing things about them, complimenting them on the nice necklace they're wearing, whatever it is. That's being responsive as well, is that, hey, I see you, you're right in front of me, you are a person, you're not an account number, you're not a transaction, you're a person. And so being responsive also is sort of paying attention to the people that are around you physically and responding to them as well.
It always shocks me when you look at socials and it's one sided and the business is not engaging with those conversations. I love the example in the story. You're basically saying you can spend that 19 minutes with that person if you want to have a chat with them, if they want to chat with you, rather than the 5 minutes to finish off the transaction, because some people need it to really embrace that experience. You've also added a whole chapter on AI, which obviously these days is so crucial. If you had a few favorite ways small businesses could use this tool for customer experience, could you share one or two of those with us?
Sure. I mean, the thing with AI is that whatever I tell you today, by the time you edit this and publish it, it'll probably be out of date. And so that's the challenge, right? Is that it is constantly changing. But here's what I'm seeing. First of all, as a small business owner myself, I am using AI to help me manage different parts of my business. I think that they're very quick to look at generative AI like a ChatGPT or a Claude. The only thing they can think of having it do for them is write a blog post. And the reality is, it's going to be perfectly average at writing a blog post, right? That is not one of its best strengths. I will tell you that, as with anything, garbage in, garbage out, and quality in, quality out. So if you are able to feed it a lot of background about your company, about, whatever, it will produce much better results. If you just ask it to write something broad, it's going to be pretty broad. But I think where it starts to blow my mind is when we use it to complete tasks that would take us hours to do. So last year, I did a survey of 200 customer experience leaders, and I asked two open-ended questions. I said, what are the biggest challenges that you're facing when it comes to improving your customer experience? And what is the benefit to your company of having a better customer experience? So this was not 1 to 5 scale, this wasn't quantitative, it was very qualitative. Now, I did ask some demographic questions as well. So the first thing I did was take 200 responses. When you ask people an open-ended question, some people answer with 1 or 2 words, some answer with 1 or 2 sentences, some answer with 1 or 2 paragraphs. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get. So I upload all of this into AI, and the first thing I ask it is, summarize it for me. Like, what are the themes? What do people keep bringing up? So when I asked about the challenges, what are the top 5 challenges that you see over and over and over and over again? Do you know how long that would have taken me to go through 200 responses and read everybody and try to interpret it and all that sort of stuff? And 30 seconds later, I've got my list. Then I asked it to cross-reference it with the demographic data to see if there were some differences based on who people said that they were. And of course, one of the big differences was where they were in the organization, that CEOs and founders and owners had different perspectives. They were all worried about the financial aspect of it, whereas your managers were worried about, how do I execute on it, right? Fascinating, especially for a guy in my business. Now I can build stuff for each one of them, right? This is where it's unbelievably powerful. And what I would say is, if you can dream it, AI can do it. The limiting factor is us dreaming. And what I'll tell you that really got me thinking this way is, I have a 19-year-old son. He's a freshman at university. He has told me that he does not use Google, period. If he has a question about anything, he goes to ChatGPT. So think about that. That's how things are changing, is that now this is the entire universe. It is as important to him as Google has been to you and I for the last, decade. And yet he's off. This is where he gets all of his information. Now, there's problems with that because it isn't always giving us the right information, but that's where it's headed. Practically speaking, I think for businesses, where I would be looking is ways to personalize. So AI can help us personalize the experience a lot easier, becoming more adept at analytics. So I have not yet met a company that says that it has too little data. Usually we have too much data. We don't know what to do with all of our data. Well, guess what? AI can help you with that. And it can help to crunch the numbers and figure stuff out for you, including personalization. Because when you have the right data, it's a lot easier to be personalized. Obviously, a lot of companies use it for customer service. I want to warn them that what we want to do here is we want to supplement our human customer service people, not replace them. Anybody that has ever tried to deal with a chatbot that just does not know the answer to the question knows how frustrating that can be. And who do we blame when that happens? The company, the brand, right? And it's not worth losing a customer over that. So when we build, say, chatbots, which are a form of AI, we want to teach them early on that if they don't know the answer to the question, they should bring on a human, because that's exactly the moment where the customer is going to be like, oh, I want to talk to a person or else, right? And so why don't we can pretty much predict that, and then we can deliver that for them. So I guess in summary is just start trying things, start playing around. I am not an expert at this, but I have been playing around with it long enough that I feel more confident. If you ask it something and you don't get the answer that you want, ask it a different way. And then once you learn how to ask it, save that so that the next time you have that question, you know exactly how to ask it, and you'll get the answer that you want.
I love the thought of using it more as a Google. I do use it, I must say. If I'm looking for stats or research, I now go to ChatGPT saying, can you link me in with the articles and share the article link so I can read it? And I find it's far quicker and far better than doing a Google search. But have you got other, you mentioned with the data, did you use ChatGPT, or was there another AI tool that you used for that, or any others that you prefer?
I subscribe to the pro version of ChatGPT. I also subscribe to Claude, which is a competitor. Again, you use them both enough. I find that they're better at different things. I think ChatGPT is probably a little bit better at scouring the internet, although Claude did just add that feature. But when I ask it to write things, I like Claude's responses better. That's just a preference. I've had other people tell me they like ChatGPT's better. But I also try to play them off each other sometimes. So sometimes I will get something from one of them and I'll ask the other one to fact check it, so that I know that I'm getting real information. I did just have something happen last week. So I'm doing a speech in China later this year, and I wanted to come up with an Asian example, because since you've read my book, you know most of my examples are from the US. And I wanted to make sure I had a couple of Asian examples. And the first example it gave me was terrific, and I'm going to use it. But it was in the food and beverage industry, and the audience here is going to be financial services. So I went back and I said, can you give me something in financial services? And it proceeded to tell me this unbelievably amazing story about a bank in China that had built an ATM with facial recognition that was meant not for security, but it was meant for sentiment. And so it was to see whether the person at the ATM was happy or sad or angry or scared or whatever it was, and to react accordingly to it. Giving me all this detail about how it had that it was giving sometimes inspiring messages, or it was helping with breathing techniques if they looked like they were really stressed. And the whole reason they built all of this was because of some insight that said that stress and finances go together. And so if they can be the bank that separate those two, blah, blah, blah. It was a great story. I was like, man, this is fantastic. I want to use this. Can you give me your source so I can just go read more about it? And that's when it told me that it completely had made up the story, and that this ATM never existed. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I got so excited. I'm like, someone should make this ATM, because that was a great idea. So we do have to be careful, especially when we're asking for it to be creative. I will say when I ask it to be analytical, I don't tend to have that problem. I have checked its work before on analytics, and I find it's near perfect. But when we do ask for that other stuff, don't take everything literally if there's no source. And I think the other thing, we were talking about the search. My son, well, he was the one that kind of inspired this. Once he told me that he was using it this way, I wanted to write a blog about this, because this impacts businesses in lots of different ways. And we've all worked hard to get our websites to be SEO optimized, but now we have to figure out how to get them to be AI optimized, because it's a different skill. It's a different set of terms and keywords and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, I did this little test. I was writing about Amazon and how it has upgraded its returns program over the years. That when it first started, way back when, you had to box up your stuff and you had to go print out a label, and like there were 17 steps. Now you just sort of drop it off someplace and you don't even need a box, right? And so I was trying to get at, well, what were the steps in between that? Because I know that every year they've sort of gotten it better. So you go Google that and you say, well, what's the history of Amazon's return policy? And if you Google that, you get 17 billion website results, none of which actually answer that question. You get top listing is going to be Amazon's current return policy. Okay, but that doesn't tell me what I want. So I go to ChatGPT and I ask the same thing, and it returns back with a timeline of year after year, every change that Amazon made. It is exactly what I was looking for. Google can't do that. Now, maybe it's AI will get good at that, but traditional Google search can't do that. That was very eye-opening for me. And I think that's why the teenagers have moved there, because whatever it is that they're asking, they just get the answer. They don't get a list of sites to go find the answer, or maybe not. They just get the answer. It's a lot faster from point A to point B.
Hadn't even considered, I don't know why I hadn't thought about the fact that it means the businesses are no longer be showing on the SEO side. As you say, that's something that must be considered. And where else are you going to show up and be seen by your customers if you're no
Yeah.
longer in Google searches?
So I've had 4 people this year. Whenever somebody calls me and is interested in having me speak, my first question is, how did you find out about me? 4 people have said ChatGPT already this year. That's incredible, right? I was like, well, what did you ask it? It's just like when when someone says, I found you on Google, you want to know, well, what did they search for? And so in this particular case, she gave me the story about how they had customer experience speakers before, and that she specifically was looking for a customer experience speaker that was also entertaining. And I was like, all right. So, she's like, it gave me 4 speakers and you were one of them. And I looked you up and now here we are. I'm like, this is fantastic. So somehow ChatGPT knows that I'm entertaining. That's good. Um, I don't
That
know if
is
that was intentional.
great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is going to continue to matter for people.
Absolutely. And I actually did do a search on customer experience experts, and you came up in that as well on ChatGPT.
Okay.
So
There we
there's
go.
the link. um, all right. So AI, critical, as you say, it's going to keep moving, but I think we all have to be open to it. There's so many opportunities. We just need to embrace it. If we can embrace it, I think that we can use it to our advantage. So yeah, I'm definitely going to
Yeah.
check out Claude more.
Somebody said to me the other day, I thought this was so smart. They basically said, what's so cool about this AI is that we all have the same opportunity to leverage it because we all have the tools in front of us. The question is, are you going to do it? Are you interested? And I'll admit, most of the time, I am not a shiny object chaser. I am not an early adopter. I joked with somebody when the Apple Watch came out, and I love my iPhone, but I joked with somebody that I was never going to get an Apple Watch because it just wasn't for me. I still don't have an Apple Watch, right? You do. So does everyone else on the planet. But I'm not an early adopter, but when this came out, I was like, okay, this is going to be a game changer and I need to be here for it. And
Yeah.
so you cannot put blinders on and pretend this isn't happening.
Yeah.
This is happening. It is already here. It is all, we're in the, sorry to use an American baseball reference. There's 9 innings in a baseball game. We're in the second inning, right? This is early days still. And so you're not too late. But it is going to continue to grow, get more and more powerful, and you want to be there for it.
So true, so true. And your baseball reference, I'm looking up Savannah Bananas. Is that right from your book,
Yes,
your
it's
example?
bananas. Yep.
I'm definitely the
If
only
you go to
baseball
their
game I'm interested in seeing.
Yes, if you go to YouTube, if you go to their YouTube channel, prepare to spend like the next day and a half there because you're going to get locked in and not want to leave.
These are the guys who have got customer experience wrapped up for everyone else who doesn't know what I'm talking about there. Okay, now I've got one sort of final question that I like to ask. When it comes to independent retailers, is there a common customer experience gap that you often notice, whether it's when you're speaking to business owners or as a consumer, that you think can be easily improved?
So I have a couple things on this. And I think the best way to explain this is to compare an independent retailer to big bad Amazon. Because almost any independent retailer is not going to have kind things to say about Amazon. My belief is that Amazon has not killed independent retailers, at least not in the way that people think it has. The benefit of being an independent retailer is that you are in a community, that you know your customers in a way that Amazon can't. You hire people, you employ people from within the community in a way that Amazon can't. And so why does someone go to an independent retailer when frankly almost anything you sell in your store you probably could buy on Amazon? It is to get that human experience that you can't get on Amazon. And so if I'm an independent retailer, I am leaning as hard into that as I can. I am going to be absolutely engaged in my community. I'm going to be sponsoring the little league teams. I'm going to be, I'm going to be a presence in the community because that's how we beat Amazon. And what we find is that if you can offer an in-person experience that is valuable to people, then price doesn't matter as much, right? And so there was a story, I had to take it out of the second edition because unfortunately this store closed during COVID. I was so sad. But there was a store in Chicago, a toy and game store, and its focus really was board games. My kids and I, since they've been little, we love board games. And I was teaching them adult strategy games when they were 8, and they were beating me by the time they were 11, right? I walk into this store, and there were two things that I noticed immediately. The first was that the woman behind the counter was basically Amazon's recommendation engine in human form. So she's like, "Tell me about the games that you like to play." And I told her. She said, "Oh, well, have you tried this one? Have you tried this one? If you love this game, you'll love this one." And of course, I'm hooked, right? I'm like, "Please show them to me," right? And I'm excited, and I'm having a conversation, and she's geeking out, and I'm geeking out. So of course, I'm going to buy the game from her, even if it's a little bit more expensive than Amazon. The second thing that they did, and this is where this is the example of sort of involving yourself in the community. So they had created in the back of the store a game library where you could check out any game, you could open it up, sit at a table, play the game before you decided to purchase it. And then on certain nights of the week, they had like singles nights where they invited people just to come play games, right? And it's so brilliant, right? These are the ways that we get people excited about us that Amazon cannot copy. So I always tell people, do not try to out Amazon because you will lose. Okay. Don't try to underprice Amazon. It's not going to work. But what you can do is you can out experience them. Because what we know about Amazon is that our experience is we order something, it's at our doorstep the next day. That's the extent of the experience. It's about speed and convenience. So you need to be about something else. But that something else is going to end up being experience because you're in person, you're a member of the community. It's like when you when I walk into my local Starbucks, their question is, "Hey, Dan, you want the usual?" That feels so good, right? That feels really good. It feels like I'm important to this big company, right? And so we can do that as small business owners because we have that competitive advantage.
I am so glad you brought up that example because when I read the book, I looked them up. I was so excited. I'm like, I went to Instagram to check them out. I'm like, they're not there. And they actually became
Yes.
our dinner conversation. And so I raised the query to, I've got
Hopefully you didn't
two,
think I was making it up like ChatGPT.
no. There was info that they'd been there, but I've got two young adult children and my husband, and we were discussing if, let's say, the game was $100. If you offered no discount, would you buy it on the spot at this store, and or would you wait a day and get it at Amazon? And what experiences mattered? My husband was experienced, my daughter was more experienced, and my son, who's younger, so he was 21 at the time, said, "No, you just buy it on Amazon. I want the discount." And he
Yeah.
doesn't like go shopping though. So the thought of going somewhere for him, it doesn't work. And I was really disappointed that that store went too, even though I'd never been there, because I just thought it was such a great concept. And we were all raving about the experience they would have had in that store. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was, and I think, but for COVID, because some people have asked me, well, if it closed, does it mean that what you're talking about doesn't work? No, I think COVID affected people in such a different way. But if you look at even bigger retailers that have failed, even multinational retailers that have failed, the reason is that they end up being products on shelves, and that's it. And if you are just products on shelves, you're going to lose to Amazon, period. You have to be more than products on shelves. There has to be an experiential part of your business. Otherwise, no one cares. Even if you have a small shop with carefully curated items, maybe you can stand out because your selection is unique, but very rarely is that the case because ultimately, and this, by the way, this is true in every industry, that there's somebody down the street selling almost exactly the same thing. And down the street's a euphemism, right? It could be anywhere. And today it could be online. But if you are just products on shelves, it's not going to work. So figure out what you can do that is unique to your business. So for a toy and game company, it's about, I want to play it before I buy it. Like that's a great way to create an experience.
Thank you so much. I've got one last question before we go. How
That's,
did you end up
that's okay.
delivering pizza to Michael Jordan?
I'm so glad you asked that. It's amazing how many people say, "Oh, that's cool," and then I don't get to tell that story. So I worked with Domino's Pizza when I was in high school, and Michael Jordan very consistently ordered from Domino's. I don't know why that was his brand of choice. He literally would pick up the phone, call, place the order, and I delivered to his house twice, but only once did he open the door. And I had been prepped by the other drivers who had been there longer, and they had told me that if you ask him for an autograph, he will give you one, but then he won't tip you. And if you don't ask for an autograph, that he's a very generous tipper. And so I kind of already knew what I wanted to do, but what sealed it for me, and this was a very, very early customer service lesson for me, is that when he opened the door, I noticed that the first thing that he did was look over my head, because he's very tall, behind me to make sure there wasn't anybody else out there. Right. And it was at that moment where I realized that he just deserved privacy when he
Yeah.
was ordering a pizza, and I wasn't going to be that dumb kid that asked for an autograph. He was a very generous tipper, and the story itself is worth more than the tip or the autograph. And so, but that was super fun for me.
That's a hero
And
moment.
pepperoni is the answer to your next question.
What was
That
it?
is his
Pepperoni?
pepperoni and sausage is his toppings of choice.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Dan. Let me just give a few details of how you can connect, and we'll have this in the show notes, obviously. So, Dan Gingiss, DANGINGISS.com. And then for Instagram at DGingiss. The Dan's book is Becoming the Experience Maker. And as I said, thoroughly enjoyed it. Really easy read with so many great examples that just make you want to keep turning and seeing what you can learn and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, also look up Dan Gingiss. Again, Dan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I know that the listeners are going to get so much out of this session.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the fun questions, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
All right, everyone, thank you so much. And we will be back with you very soon. Take care. Bye.